Hey, welcome back, everybody. Making Speed, Noah, Charles, and today we're here with Eric Brockmeyer, who is, he's really a very talented automotive designer, but he's to us, you're just a guy that sits around in your pajamas and draws cars. And we have a couple requests before we started. One of them was that you had to wear some kind of pants.
Right.
Either shorts.
We know it's warm in sunny Florida. But
right. I know you're comfortable and you know, you're already sheltered at home as we're moving towards in some other states, but you know.
Yeah, it's pants optional here at Brockmeyer Design. Sure.
So we have to wear pants at work, but I don't know. I guess given the option, we'd probably still wear pants. We don't want to make anybody super uncomfortable.
I got no HR department, so it don't matter.
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
We kind of have one.
Kind of.
Yeah, it's more of a section in a handbook that says not. Most of the things in our handbook are, you know, people are violating anyway.
They're optional.
Yeah, face piercings, neck tattoos, that stuff. Yeah, they're all violated. So anyway, we roll on. So anyway, we've I think for past, it has been 3 years. Have you been working with you for 3 years now?
I think so. At least 3 years.
At least 3 years.
It's been about 3 years.
You know,
yeah.
It's become an important part of our process. You know, when we started building these cars, people weren't doing as many renderings, and it's tricky because
at least the surprises for the customers, right? Without a rendering.
Well, I mean, people always make the comparison that you're gonna, you know, you build a house or you build whatever, you got to start with some type of plan or drawing, right?
Right.
The amount of money these cars are costing these days, it just makes sense to get a drawing, and so everybody's on the same page.
Right.
It's great. So yeah,
Seems lots.
It makes a lot more sense. But we started off, we didn't have that, and you know, really we communicated as best as we possibly could, and you know, we often found there would be some disconnect, and then you know, when we get, it's kind of an industry where stuff doesn't go right at a lot of shops, and you might inherit a project, and usually the biggest complaint is like, well, I wanted this, you know, I wanted this, I had this vision. The guy kind of just went off and did his own thing. Anyway, since we've been working with you, not only are the designs, you know, beautiful, the customers love them, but they're also, you know, you design stuff in a way I feel like you know what you're actually designing, and you're familiar with those cars. So
and it can be built.
It can be built.
That's the other thing too. There's a lot of guys that can draw things, but you look at it, you're like, okay,
that
this
looks cool.
customer's not going to like this because I can't even build.
That's not the way this door would ever hit the dash without us, you know, redoing the entire body on this car. So I feel like you actually know what you're working with, which is a huge value to us, obviously. So,
you know, I'm not a fabricator or a builder, you know, of any kind, but I feel like I do have a good understanding of what can be built and, you know, how things go together. And, you know, it kind of goes back to my, you know, I do have an industrial design degree. So that kind of helped me prepare for stuff like this, you know, and really understanding how things are built and what the processes are. That kind of helps a lot.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
So have you been drawing cars since you were a kid? Is that something you always did?
Oh, yeah.
Since day one.
My parents told me, they said I was so easy to take care of. It was either drawing cars or playing with the Hot Wheels cars.
Right.
Those are the only two things I did.
All they had to do was feed you and give you water, and then it was good to go.
Yeah.
So I remember, like, we've talked a couple times at shows, and I remember you telling me once that you went to go get a degree in, like you said, industrial design. And then where did you work after that?
I worked at a boat place, a boat manufacturer called Sea Ray Boats. A lot of people probably heard of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Sea Ray Boats.
They make dinghies, right? Little small dinghy boats.
Yeah. Well, we worked on anything from the 17-footers to the 55-foot yachts.
Right.
So I had a range of projects that, you know, that were unbelievable. You know, you're drawing a little bow rider seat, and the next week you could be drawing the interior of a yacht, you know. So I got a lot of experience there. I worked there for like 4 years.
Yeah.
It was fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. Was that are they in Florida?
They're in Florida. That's why I'm here in Florida, actually.
Right.
We moved here for that job. I graduated and got the job here. And hell, I mean, the weather, we just stayed. So I told my wife, I was like, you know, I can do this anywhere, just stay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
And then inevitably, what caused you to move on to start just doing cars? What was it about it that, or was it all good? And you just
Well, it
couldn't-
was fine. It was fine. I mean, I love all aspects of design.
Right.
I mean, I can see good design everywhere in all types of products and things. But cars are where the fire is. Where's the passion. So even though I enjoyed a lot of the aspects of designing these boat parts and mostly interiors, a lot of interior stuff I did. It just didn't. I didn't have that inner fire for the boat stuff.
Right.
So it was a job. It was a great job. It got me really kind of settled in. Going from school and having no jobs and
Right.
eating ice every night to now I got a job. It got me through that point. But then I was like, this isn't really where I want to be. Final. So I was doing a lot of work for people. I had met some local shops, and they were having me do projects for them. And I'll do it at night. I get home from work, and I do it at night. I'm working till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And eventually, I told my wife, I was like, can't keep doing this. I got to either
one of the
pitch
other.
off or I got to make a decision. So eventually, it got to the point where I had enough people asking me to do stuff that I could make that decision and tell her and. Look, I got this many projects for this many clients lined up.
Right.
I can do this.
How did you end up meeting Boyd Coddington?
Man, I'll tell you. I think it's funny. I met a client I met a client. I worked with a client, and he introduced me to another client, and then this guy was having wheels built by Boyd, and somehow he told Boyd about me and said, look, here's the drawings that he did for my car. And that's how I met Boyd.
Wow.
And, of all the people Boyd could have worked with, I'm sure he was getting packages in the mail, people sending him drawings and stuff.
Sure.
I don't know how that happened, but he called me up and said, you want to have me work on some stuff? I was like, holy cow, man, this is insane.
And was that when you're still working at? Did they have?
Yeah, that's what happened. I was still working at the boat place.
Okay.
And he's the big reason why I quit.
Right. There you go. That's what I wanted to.
Boyd Coddington. It's like, man, I'm this is too good.
Yeah.
Right. See ya.
So,
You're gonna say yes to that.
It's funny. Boyd used to call me like. He used to not pressure me, but he would, tell me, when are you going to quit that place? When are you going to quit and just draw cars? You shouldn't be doing boats. You need to be drawing these hot rods. I'm like, yeah, we'll get there, but I'll get there.
Right.
And then one time he called and he's like, when are you going to quit? I was like, I quit. I said, send me more work. I quit.
Now you're on the hook.
The interesting thing about Boyd Coddington is he kind of kickstarted a lot of people's careers, really. If you go back and look at that, John Butera worked there, Jesse James worked there, Charlie Hutton. The list goes on and on and on. It's pretty fascinating, really.
I mean, I'm so fortunate that I got to meet him at that early stage, because then not only meeting Boyd Coddington right then, but then Bobby Alloway was looking for help with doing interiors and stuff, and Boyd told Bobby, because they were like close friends back then.
Right.
He said, you need to have Eric help you with these interiors and stuff, because you're just winging these interiors. You gotta need help. So then I got Bobby Alloway calling me. Now he's having me draw these interiors, and then it started doing more projects with Bobby, and then Bobby was branching me out into different pretty high end clients. And like, man, it got really big really fast. As far for me, like the names I was working with.
Right. That's incredible.
Whoa, I got to really make sure I do good here, because
right.
I'll blow all this.
Do you remember what was the first car that you actually designed for payment? Like, where you actually got paid to draw something? Do you remember what that was?
I can't remember the first one, but I'll tell you one guy. I was working at a Chevrolet dealership back in Ohio before I moved to Florida.
Yeah.
And this guy had a racing motorcycle, a drag motorcycle, and I did a pencil sketch. It was just a pencil drawing, but I had all shading and everything in it and stuff. And the guy was like, he goes, how much? I was like, $50. And he got all mad and bent out of shape. He was like, oh, I ain't paying $50 for a drawing. I was like, Right. That wasn't my first paying job, but that memory sticks
That
in
was
my
your
head.
first
All the time.
attempt
that
at
was-
getting paid.
You know,
That was your
just crazy. You know,
Yeah.
was that the first time you thought you might not be able to get paid to do this after all?
I think at that point I realized I'm doomed.
This guy is
Can't
casting too much doubt. So,
Yeah.
what? I don't know. I'm kind of interested in what your design process is now, and then but maybe like take us through kind of where you started with your design process and if it's changed or how it's changed at all over the years.
Probably because of technology, right? Like,
Yeah.
You mean the actual physical, like creating the
Yeah.
artwork?
Did you start drawing by hand and then go digital, or is there, and then I guess there's that aspect, but then like just your overall approach, have you looked at it in a different way over the years, or has it changed at all, or have you kind of just
Oh,
been,
it definitely has. I
Yeah.
mean, I think if you're in any creative field, you grow or go backwards, maybe, I don't know. But I'm 48 years old, so Photoshop and the computer stuff didn't come along until well into my adulthood. So drawing by hand was all I knew how to do for the longest time. And I think, learning how to do all that stuff with markers and paper, pencil, and I used to like grind up chalk and then you kind of wipe it on the paper with cotton to get some like an airbrush effect.
Yeah.
So I used to do all that stuff and create rendering. I still got folders of it, all those old renderings, and I look at them now and I think they're terrible. But it's how we work back. It's how we work back then.
Right.
And I'm really fortunate. I feel fortunate that I got to do that because when I started with the computer, my goal was to not let the drawings look like they were computer generated. I wanted the computer to let, it was just another tool. I just wanted to have it help me get a little bit more crispness and just help me with the design aspect of it. But I wanted it to look like they were renderings and not computer generated illustrations. You probably know what I'm talking about. Sometimes something looks very computer generated, you can tell.
Sure.
And so when I started, it was really a goal. Like in fact, when I was first used the computer, I would just do the hand drawing and do all the marker work on it, scan that in, and then use like a Photoshop airbrush tool to get to like really make it look rich.
Right.
So it still looked like a rendering, but I had all this, to have like a finalized in the computer.
Interesting.
So it's really grown, and now I still do a lot of sketching on paper for ideas and stuff, but a lot of times it'll start right on the computer because I have a big, a drawing tablet that I can draw, digitally right on the computer.
Right.
So I don't have to, do the process of drawing and scanning and,
So is it
So
fast?
it has changed, but I still try to keep that aspect of make it look like a rendering,
Right.
or a piece of artwork and not computer generated, which is hard because it's easy to do.
Yeah.
It's easy to let the computer do things for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
I try to keep it that basic philosophy of make it look like artwork that was done a little more free form, a little bit more with a hand touch to it.
Not so digitized.
Right.
Not so digitized. And I think that with the digital pen, I can control that because when I do like reflections, you can tell there's pen marks in there. There's, so like more hand drawn rather than letting a computer do a reflection and a fade job.
Right.
It looks, you can tell the digitized versus something that's a little more controlled by hand.
How many
Hope
cars?
that wasn't too boring. That sounded really.
No, this is good.
This is what we wanted
People
to
love
do.
the people love details. That's
Yeah.
one of whenever people ask us questions or come visit the shop, that it's like you can see the finished product, but
Yeah.
I think the fascination for people,
A to B. How
do you get there? Even for people who do design like you, they still like to hear like, oh, you do it that way. Never thought about doing that way. And same with a guy rebuilding an engine or painting whatever. Everybody likes the different steps, and that's kind of the fascination. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm the same way. I love the very early stages of where something came from.
right.
Right.
Even if it's just like a real bad sketch, like a rough sketch, and the finished product might be awesome, but you see that initial sketch, oh yeah, see where that came from.
You want to see where it started. Yeah, that's kind of the where was this thing born? What were you going to ask, Charles?
Oh, so how many cars or trucks do you actually draw a year or design every year?
Man, that's an impossible question. I have no idea. It's I don't know. I mean, it's just constant. I mean, I'm constantly busy. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm every day, man. It's like I'm hard at it every day. There's no like going to the beach for a few hours and playing golf, and it's full-time job, man.
Yeah.
And I'm still way behind. So
Yeah, we were thinking you'd have a darker tan just
Right.
because you live in
No.
West Florida, but you're
He
not.
doesn't have time to go buy
I've been in
pants.
self-quarantine for the last 16 years.
You already know this.
Yeah.
You already know that you don't even sit outside and work. No can
No.
do.
Well,
No way,
so
no
if
way.
you don't know how many cars you design a year, you probably know the answer to this one. How many Riddler cars or Grade 8 cars have you been a part of? Do you know that? I know you've been a part of quite a few of them, but
maybe 10 or so, a dozen.
that's impressive.
I mean, not regular winners, but like I said, grade
Yeah,
eight cars,
grade
maybe
eight,
grade eight or
Yeah.
I think trying to think the one car I was involved with that won the Riddler was the Duesenberg that Johnson Hot Rod Shop built.
Okay. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a nice car.
Red and wait.
Yeah,
No.
real dark.
Yeah, it was like a dark burgundy.
Yeah.
It had wire wheels.
Uh-huh.
I think it was 2009.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, when that project came to me, it was a lot of the metal work had already been done, but I did a lot of interior, I helped them with the interior and just detail like engine bay stuff, like the valve covers and the way the top of the motor works and the engine bay and the gauge bezel and that thing. Then we did, yeah. So that was pretty cool.
What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite kind of area of vehicles you like to design? Like, is it like, is there a part of it where you're like, you get totally absorbed
Everyone
in
wants
it?
to do the outside. I mean, everyone wants to do the exterior.
Everyone wants to the outside, yeah.
Everybody's doing the exterior. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Just the overall look of the exterior, that's obviously the funnest part.
Right.
Some of the
Interiors are fun too. I mean, I think, I think I've really shined on some interior stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it comes back from the boat place because we used to do a lot of interior stuff for the boats, the yachts and so we were exposed to some really high end stuff,
Sure.
and I think I tried to keep that, carry that on and so interiors can be really fun too. And you notice how interiors are coming on. It used to be you just take it to the interior shop and say, yeah, put an interior in it.
Yeah. Slap some
Now,
just
put
wrap
as much effort in the interior as as you do on the exterior.
Well, it's before, like years ago, people used to never even budget much for the interior, right? By the time the car got to interior, they were out of money. So
Right.
they were like, yeah, just do what I can afford, And now it's really thought out and planned ahead because it's a key component to the whole build.
Oh yeah, and the details. Yeah, you look at how we're doing interiors now versus 15 years ago. It's night and day. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Hey, I was gonna say versus 5 years ago. Even I feel like it's moving.
Yeah.
And people are designing. Like Charles was saying. There wasn't a whole lot of budget there, so people weren't going to go and design every little intricate detail. But there's design. You look at these cars. Everything is thought of. It's like, it's the amount of effort that would go into a full-on production car with every single last thing, being custom and one-off. And I don't know. It's very
Well, if you showed somebody photos of the interior before it was all wrapped, people would just be blown away at the construction of how we do all this stuff now, with plastic and other composites and things.
3D printing and all that stuff.
It's amazing.
We really have gotten to the point where we're almost building concept cars. Some of these, I mean,
they're there, yeah.
I mean, there's really to the point where if you can think of it, it can be built. So a lot of times your imagination is usually on the back end. It's like you got to make your imagination keep up with what can actually be built because it's almost sky's the limit, really.
Well, that's what I was going to say too. I mean, some of my favorite things that you've designed would be the Rick Door cars. It's just amazing. Those cars are just sexy as hell. Like they're beautiful, beautiful cars. And I don't know how the creative process of that is, if it's you and Rick together or if you just kind of just ran with it or what, but then it's carried on out by Luke DeLay, it's those cars are incredible.
Yeah, those cars they're pretty sexy. Because he's heavy into that Art Deco, real super flowy, and so everything's super sexy, super curvy. And these latest cars, they're completely one off. I mean, they're like
Yeah.
one after the other. There's like 5 or 6 of them that were one off, just completely hand built aluminum body cars. And he got really into that French style, like
Yeah.
like uh, Delahaye's and all that kind of stuff. So he was really heavily inspired by that. So it's like there's like 5 or 6 cars that are all very French inspired.
And that was kind of started actually by Boyd, wasn't it? Were you a part of that? Yeah.
I was. That
Yeah.
was the last thing that we worked on, and unfortunately, Boyd never saw it completed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I worked with him on the design for that. He called it the What the Hay.
Yeah. Was that Scotty?
Oh, that's right.
What was that
Or
guy's
what the heck?
name that owned that car? Was it Scotty? I can't remember his
No,
name.
it's called French Connection. I'm sorry, it's called
French
Connection.
Connection.
Yeah.
That was at. It actually popped up at SEMA a few years ago.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
did see it in person.
Yeah, both of those cars were, I think, amazing. And they probably set the tone for looking elsewhere for inspiration. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be Fords and Chevys, and. But yeah, he never saw it done. I
Yeah.
mean, it's really it's unbelievable.
There was a few of his cars actually. Remember? It's been a long time ago now, but they ran them through Barrett Jackson, and they were like not complete. They were just project cars from Boyd. I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know who ended up with those cars, but there was like a 40 Ford convertible, I think,
Yeah.
and there was a couple of like
Was that
there was,
4 years ago?
It might have been 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was like 3 cars that went through.
Yeah. Every once in a while, you still see them getting moved around. They'll pop up out of nowhere, and
Yeah.
you'll hear somebody got it and bought it, or I'm sure somewhere out there. I'm sure there's a nice collection of stuff.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
you never.
yeah.
Then they pop up. You're like, oh, that's where that stuff's been.
Yeah, exactly.
So what? Do you have some people? It's kind of a weird, random question, but do you have some people that you haven't worked with that you like to work with? Or maybe we could open it up and be like, I mean, you could take out time or people that are still alive or anything like that as well. Like who would you have liked to work with? That
I always thought it'd be cool to do something for Jay Leno. I mean, I don't
Oh, yeah.
think he seems like a real down to earth guy that seems like you really get along with, and it'd be fun to do something for him.
Yeah, he's
Off the top of my head, that's what I think of.
It'd be pretty interesting working with him too, because
he's just a nice, laid back, guy. He's got lots of good jokes, a little edgier than the stuff that he told when he was, closer to his original material, But yeah, he's a good. I met him a year ago or 2 years ago, and we had a truck that you designed, that we built and we had out in California. So ended up bringing it by his shop and drove around for a couple hours with him in the truck while we're doing some filming. And he's just a funny guy. Like he's the kind of laid back customer that would be a good person to do a job with. Plus, the other thing is he's not confined by like what other people are doing or other colors people like or other cars people like. He just gets into stuff. He'll ride it all the way out. He'll buy a whole collection of, he'll buy a huge collection of motorcycles he gets into. He'll buy exotic cars. He'll buy muscle cars. Then he's got that shop behind, this kind of like on the other side of the street of his warehouse where there's usually about 6 or 7 people just working away. So.
Yeah, he seems like it wouldn't be a typical project. I don't think. He would probably come up with something crazy. Something I wouldn't have thought.
He would, yeah.
Want to do what?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, let's do that. And he'd actually do it. So that would be.
Yeah.
Do you have any personal favorites over the years? Just stuff that some standouts, or have you done so many it's just a wash of?
It is kind of a blur, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. When you ask that question, I start, like trying to remember some stuff, and it's like, man, it's like trying to remember some of the cars we've done, or at least been a part of. I don't know if I have favorites. I know that fond memories of meeting people through cars.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you meet good people through cars, and you kind of connect with that car because you connected with the owner.
Was there any designers that you kind of looked up to growing up, like any?
Oh yeah,
Italian
Steve
designer?
Stanford was number one.
Stanford, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the magazines when I went to the bookstore when I was like high school and stuff. I mean the tech articles, I mean I could care less. The bodywork articles could care less. I went right to those concept pages like
Right.
that were Chip Foose and Steve Stanford and that I was just enamored with that. So it's almost like I knew I was like man I got to do that.
Yeah.
And so those were my heroes. Growing up and looking at that stuff.
Right.
It's so easy to go find stuff on the internet these days. I definitely miss like having to like the anticipation of magazines coming out, and
Yeah.
you didn't have subscription to all of them,
Right.
so you'd have to ride your bike to the store or to the grocery store to the book wherever you get them from. I mean,
It made things more special, I think,
Oh,
too,
yeah.
because you waited a month, right, to see
Yeah.
the new designs that were out or the new cars that were built, and there was nothing in between.
then you'd go too early. The magazine wouldn't be on the shelf yet.
Yeah.
You'd have to come back another time. I mean, there was a lot more work. Now stuff is so accessible. It definitely like
Takes kind of the glamour, not glamour, but just takes the mystique out of it a little bit, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
I remember when I was young, I used to send drawings to like Street Rodder magazine or Custom Rodder magazine,
Uh-huh.
and I just like please consider this for your because they used to have readers art in those
Right.
magazines, and so I would submit stuff all the time, and I'll never forget I got a letter back from Custom Rodder. It's like 1988. I had sent in a drawing. It was hand drawing back then, obviously, of a Buick Riviera, like a '65 Riviera. It had like a Roadster. And they wrote back and said, we're going to use this in our reader's art. Man, I'll tell you what, that was like,
Yeah.
couldn't have gotten higher, you know.
Yeah.
right,
It was the
right.
Yeah.
best thing ever. I was at that bookstore because they didn't really tell you when it was coming out. They just said in some issue.
Right.
So man, I was on that all those bookstores or the
Flying-
bookshelves.
yeah.
Man, what's that
Well,
coming out? When it
to
finally
be-
did, man, it was like,
To be featured in a magazine, whether it was your art or your actual car, that was
Yeah.
like equivalent now to like winning a major award, like the
Yeah.
Riddler or AMBR award or something. It was such a big deal. And if you were on the cover, you won the damn Riddler. That's what
Right.
it was like. You were.
yeah, you're right, man, exactly.
I mean, there's
It was
nowhere
a big
else
deal.
when everybody's attention is funneled towards that, and there's no other way to access, then
Yep.
that's it. That's
Right.
that's the award, and more people are going to see it than any.
So Tim here, that's helping us out. He's an awesome photographer, and he's had many magazine covers that he's shot. And I think when he found out all the magazines were going away, we had to go mop his office up because there was a lot of
Yeah.
tears on the floor. It was a pretty sad day.
It really is.
There was
It really
bagpipes
is.
playing and everything. It was bad. But
Because the other thing about magazines too is, like you said, you had to wait a month, right? So
yeah,
I always complain about, like these cars that come out. Let's say some car comes out at SEMA, you'll see it over the internet for the next 5 months,
Right.
Constantly. And then when you see it at a show, it's almost like, oh yeah, there's that car.
yeah,
I've already seen it a million times
Right.
because you've seen it so much on the internet. Where before, the magazines were your only outlet, So it's a shame to see all the magazines starting to disappear.
The other thing about the internet is you're bombarded. You're bombarded with so much information and maybe so much of the same car that, it's not like it takes away a lot of the allure. It's like
the
it's
first like experience I remember with that was like seeing Cadzilla, in a magazine, and that car was so crazy for its time, right?
Yeah.
And then I went to a show, and here comes Boyd driving into the show with Cadzilla, and I was like, as a kid, I was just in awe. Like it changed me forever,
Yeah.
And to see that car kind of come to life, because actually when it was featured in a magazine, they showed some metalwork and everything on the car, and then to see it in person was just, it was awesome,
Yeah.
And now
And another thing with the internet too is that a lot of, and I understand why it's done. A lot of shops they'll take you through the whole every week or every month they're posting build photos of stuff. So where when it's done, you're kind of not really surprised by what come out.
Yeah.
Do you think that's like a magician telling you how he does their trick? To me, that's kind of what it's like. But like you want to, it's a great marketing opportunity. But at the same time, magicians aren't marketing they aren't marketing their tricks with, well, here's what you do. You got to hold the quarter on between these fingers, and when you go like this, it's gone. But I feel like it takes it blows the reveal.
We've kind of gone back and forth with that here because
we want to show, because one of the most interesting one of the most interesting things is for people to be able to see the process.
Yep.
But it kind of ruins the trick at the end. Not that it's
Charles. You were talking about watching Cadzilla drive in, and I had a similar experience with back in the '80s. We went to the Canfield Nationals in Ohio, and a friend, and we saw that car Butanic that Troy built.
Yep.
For the first time. Nobody knew that thing was even being built. It wasn't like any sneak peeks in the magazine. I don't remember anyway. But we saw the car for the first time, and it was just like your jaw just dropped, and you could not believe what you were looking at.
Yeah.
And I don't really get that these days because you've seen so many build photos, you've seen so many things, construction photos.
It's an
and when
overload.
you see the real car, it's like, oh yeah, it turned out good job.
Right.
But you lose that jaw-dropping impact of the final.
I feel like
that's my opinion, but
metalwork's kind of a funny thing because when you see it, it's kind of cool to see it going together. But when you see it, when it's all finished and complete and bodyworked and painted, engine compartments are pretty good examples now. They're so elaborate and crazy looking. When you see it all together, it's like it might take you a second to figure out how it's done. How did they do that? But then when it's in raw metal, you're like, wow, that's actually really impressive. But okay, I see how you do it. So it's an interesting. I don't know. It's where we are right now, and it's not a bad thing. So
no, it's not a bad thing. Yeah. No, not at all. So I'm sure it's inspirational for a lot of people to see.
It is.
It's really
and maybe even be able to follow and maybe even try to mimic and try to learn from it. Sure. Absolutely.
I think it's a great tool for getting people, because being able to look and be like, oh, I see that's how they did it, and then actually doing it yourself is you can't, or it's going to take a long time for people to learn how to do it, right? So it's one of the things we always talk about is getting as many people into the hobby, keeping people in the hobby, getting some kids out of tech schools to come work here. Everybody's kind of on the same path with that stuff, and I think having that information out there it's a lot different, to be able to see how something's done than I guess it's a lot more, and it's intimidating to see a finished product and be like, oh, I could never, I could never do that. Well, it might be like inspiring. It also might just be, you kind of want to like be able to inspire and not just like, blow someone's mind and have it be like, well, I can't climb that mountain. But
well, the times are so different now too, because like when I was a kid growing up, my dad had a car in the garage he was building. My neighbors had cars in their garages they were building. So I was an annoying little teenager, like 13, 14 years old, beating on people's doors, trying to go in their garage and work with them, but that's how it was back then. Now kids look at YouTube and, all these other channels to see how things are being done. So they're kind of getting the same experience, but they're just not looking in their neighbor's garage and watching. They're looking at it online. So it's a whole different way of learning, Same thing with like the car magazines going away. Us older guys hate to see that happen, but it's all digital for them, the younger crowd.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's inevitable, but I understand.
So
it's funny you talk about your neighbor building cars. It kind of it's a silly little story. When I was a kid, I used to build model cars in our garage. We had a garage out back. It was separated, and I had like a bench set up with lights, and I'd go out there at night and I'd work on my model cars. And there was a guy 2 houses down, and he would be out at night working on his. He had like a 33 Ford sedan 4-door. And he was hot rodding. He was chopped it and all this stuff. And so I'd always kind of pretend like I was a hot rodder because I was out at night working on my model cars, and I could hear his tools going. It's 2 houses down, the lights on in this garage. I'm like, he's building hot rods too. That's cool.
Yeah, that's kind of how it was for me too. I always tell the story, and he's one of my good friends today. His name's Glenn, but I used to go over to his place. He lived up the street, and I would see him building all kinds of cars out there, and I would stop in and I'd ride my bike, back and forth in front of his house and look in the garage. And finally one day I went up there and I'm like, hey, can I clean your garage for you? And he's like, no, get out of here, So, so he shooed me away, So then the next week I came back and I said, hey, I know you won't let me clean your garage, but can I cut your grass? Because if I cut your grass, I can see what's going on in the garage, you know? So I cut his grass for like a couple of months, and then finally let me come in the garage. And then I started working on stuff with him. And I was like 12, 13 years old at the time, probably 12.
Yeah.
So then a little bit at a time, he would let me do more and more on cars, you know, there. So we ended up building a lot of cars years
awesome.
on down the road, which is really cool. So
Probably changed your life. It set the whole course of your life right there. Probably.
Yeah. So he was like a mechanical guy and did paint and body work. And then my dad was a sheet metal fabricator. So I could kind of learn from him too. But it was, interesting, you know, growing up. But I think there's less and less guys working on cars in garages nowadays, though. You know, it's around a little bit, but not as much.
Yeah, the inspiration almost has to come reverse. Like you see someone else doing it online, and you're like, oh, I think I might like to do that, rather than, you know, you're out, you know, there's people out in their driveway working on stuff, and it's just not as it's kind of a little less out of touch than it used to be.
Sure.
So, anyway, so we're like everybody else. We just put tons of pictures of everything online, and you know.
Yeah,
hey, it's content. It's good.
It's content.
We get a lot of.
Stuff.
I mean, we do get a lot of people asking questions about, you know, how'd you do that? What color is that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, or what wheels are those? I mean, just constant stuff, like constant questions, which is great. We're here to answer all that stuff.
And the more info you put out there, the more questions they ask, because they want to know more detail. Oh, I saw that, and it's interesting. People will reference stuff we built, you know, a long time ago, or some really specific detail that you don't even remember when they ask you a question. You're like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh, here's what we did. So when we do tours of our shop, which is like, you know, we get a lot of people through here. Currently, we're on the lockdown, the Corona lockdown. So we've closed the doors to the shop. So our theory was, let's keep everybody as safe as possible. But we got a lot of people driving through St. Louis because 70 comes through, 44, 64, 40. They kind of all cross, you know, about 15 miles away from here. So lots of people realize that they're in St. Louis and they remember we're in St. Louis, or they plan to stop through. So we do a tour. And I think one of their favorite things to look at is we have all your renderings up on the wall, like blown up. You know, I think how big are they, Tim?
Pretty big, 24 by 36.
24 by 36, and
that's good.
And sometimes a car will be in front. You know, will be in front of it, whether we're working on it or it's in for service, and we're like, and we taught them kind of here's our design process, and like here's who we use for a lot of our design work, and I'm like, see. That was our blueprint. It looks just, and in the end, they really look just. They've all come out looking so much like the rendering, which, you know, is actually like, I don't know. I think a testament to your skills.
It's you design buildable cars.
Yeah, because a lot of times you'll like. It seems like people have kind of like been tightening up that gap a little bit between like the car renderings and what was actually built. But for a number of years, you'd be like, you know, you'd see the rendering and then it would get built and you'd be like, oh, okay, they like got most of it. Yeah. But you look at, you know, it's so, you know, all of the time, the stuff that we ended up building, I mean, it's the rendering.
I like to compare it similar to like the concept cars that the OEM people put out, you know, manufacturers, and then the actual production car, right? Two totally different things most of the time. So we try. I don't think we do that at all to our customers.
No.
I mean, they've got like pretty hardcore rendering of what we're gonna build, and in fact, the white '67 C10 we just finished. That customer, he was like, it looks like the rendering. He goes, it's so incredible, you know. And I mean, he's one of the only customers lately that's actually came out and said it like that. But I thought that was really cool that he was really impressed with it. He goes, it made the process a lot more fun because I knew what it was going to look like. And he goes, I just didn't realize how close it would be at the very end.
That's really cool to hear. Yeah, but I mean, you know, a lot of it comes from us just working together the way we do, though, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we got to just go through those, your ideas, my ideas, his ideas, everybody's ideas, and kind of match them up until we get to the final one.
And that's what a lot of customers ask. They go, well, how is the process? And I'm like, well, I'll come up with, I'll do the initial consultation with you. I'll get all your ideas. I'll throw a bunch of my ideas in. I'll get some ideas from Noah. I'll get some ideas from the guys in the shop. Yeah. Then Eric's got his ideas, and like it's a big mashup of all this stuff, but in the end, it turns out really cool. And everybody's a part of that.
But we should probably point out that those renderings you're seeing on the wall, those probably weren't the first ones we did,
Exactly,
So
yeah.
You know what I mean? We kind of went through that process of here's the first one, and then we say, let's work on this, let's change this, let's work on that.
Right.
More ideas flow until you get to the final one.
Exactly.
And then that's why it looks so close to the original car, because you've actually thought through that process, and looked at the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it becomes an important part, I think, of estimating the work as well and figuring out here's what we can do, here's what we can't do, because stuff takes especially metal work and custom interior work takes a lot of time to accomplish. So I think it allows us to really work through that process with the customer as well and say, oh, well, we could pretty make it look almost as cool, but like tone it back a little bit or whatever. Right. So it's I don't know, it's really cool. But our customer on the C10 was so taken aback by how close it was to the rendering when he saw it. He actually, this is right before SEMA, he came in and he's a guy that works hard and works a lot of hours and has a very stressful job. And it was sitting on we have a photo floor that we use for taking photos of inventory stuff and projects kind of, when they, as they're kind of moving along and when they're completed. But he stood up, the car was sitting on there getting detailed, and he walked around it for 2 hours. And he was like, but when he first started, he started tearing up. It was like so it was a cool moment for, I think, it was cool for us and for all the guys in the shop, because I think, that one of the greatest compliments you can be paid in the industry is like when the customer kind of picks up what you put down, and what everybody did. And it was one of those moments where people were like, oh my God, he got it. He got it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, no doubt.
Yep.
It was pretty cool. So good.
Yeah, that is cool. You were talking about processes change and that, and you're talking about renderings looking like the real finished product and stuff. I remember I got advice from when I was first starting out. I got advice from a shop owner. This was back before computer stuff, and he was like, your job really is to get the customer excited. So the wheels are going to be way bigger and the roof's going to be chopped way lower. It's got to look just exaggerated in cartoons, so he gets all excited about it, but it's not really what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
So if I were to actually take that advice to heart today, I wouldn't have a job, because everybody really wants they really want to see what it's going to be. They don't want like a cartoon of it. They want to see, what am I going to get?
Right. Well, the process of building the cars is very long.
Yeah.
It's usually very expensive, so it's a comfort factor to know that, like.
Well, and the styling too is not the 1960s anymore.
Right.
When they were building kind of, real wacky, crazy, cartoonish type creations, which is cool. There's a history. There was a cool point in time, but that's not where we're at now. I think now, well, at least for our thought process is like, do a lot of subtle changes to a car to where when somebody looks at it, they can't even point them all out because they're not even really recognized yet. They're just like, this thing looks so different. I don't know why. I'm gonna have to inspect it closer.
I feel like the little details appeal to a lot of people, even the most scrutinous person who's like, the guy that's gonna be like, oh, I really hate that. But they usually say that on the stuff that's like way exaggerated. But on like nice little design cues, stuff they had. Yeah, they had the stuff that they love already, that they like kind of to have maintained in the design, and like little changes to that stuff. They're like, oh, that's actually better than an original look. That's good, and
exactly.
I think it's
that's
hard.
Kind of the whole idea, and it's make it better than original.
Right.
Make it, hell, the thought thing, a lot of cars were drawn. The designers back in the 50s or 60s might have drawn something like that, but due to production costs, whatever, they might have had to tone it down. But we're just trying to. We don't have those limitations, so we can kind of do what they wanted to do back then.
Back to the concept car.
Back to the concept, yeah.
Right. Which is awesome. So.
I like to think, you're talking about cars that are so expensive and they take a long time, and I'd like to think that the renderings will give the people something to, I'm going to spend all this money, and then you look at the rendering, oh, well, this is what I'm going to get, so I'm cool. This is going to be awesome.
Well, and that's a thing that gets passed around amongst all their friends, too, and I think it gets their whole car group excited, and people and their wife might buy into it a little more, maybe like, hey, this is what I'm spending money on, right?
Well, psychologically, it's tough for people because up until the very end of the build, it doesn't look like much. I mean,
Right.
there's right. It's like it takes so long to get
Right.
to a place, like right before you do the interior or right before you paint it. All the body work just drags on and drags on, and it's
Yeah.
all building to a point that you're going to have something to, you got to have something really, really nice to lay paint on.
Yeah.
But all that metal work, all those details, it takes so long to build up to that point. And if they don't have an idea of what they're building, people like you can hit a weird speed bump, and we you want to avoid that and keep moving. So the rendering is a powerful thing where they're like, oh man, they can see that way, they can reference stuff you're doing on the rendering. Like, oh man, it's gonna look just like the rendering. You hear them start to say stuff, so it's really it's a
I
killer
think
thing.
As a shop, it kind of helps you create your own design elements, or like your own style, if you will.
Yeah.
And you're really good at that, Eric, by the way, because you kind of know what we do now, and our style here, and you incorporate that into our builds. And I think that's probably very tough for you to do because you work with so many different other builders, and you kind of have to get to know them and know their style, and then try to work that in with some of your design elements too. So that's a whole nother talent, like above and beyond even being able to draw these things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess one of the biggest compliments I get sometimes is that I listen.
Right.
Like, like a lot of times you come to me with the project parameters, and I listen. You got to listen to what the thing's about, what the project's about, what you're trying to accomplish with it. Not just the tiny details like these are the wheels, but just the overall feel of what you're trying to accomplish with the car. If you listen, you get a feel for it. So I mean, I've heard people tell me that before, and that's probably one of my best skills, just listening.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I can imagine, like, whenever you're hearing, if we switch places, like when I call you, you're probably you're listening to all the new things that we're going to do on this build, but you're also probably replaying some of the last projects, and you're like, okay, and you're probably floating all these ideas together to make it look like something we would build here at Classic Car Studio.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and to be honest, I mean, a lot of times you guys will inspire me. I'll see like real things that you guys are doing, and I'll look at my drawings, like I don't know I don't know if that's creative enough. These guys are doing stuff, their own that's really creative.
Yeah.
So it's like I really step it up and make sure that it's going to be like good enough for these guys to want to build and show their customer.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely been like it's custom car buildings come so far in the last 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, but you can definitely see the the interaction between the builders and people designing cars, and how it's like they're kind of, everybody's been stepping up their levels. So
Sure.
kind of like, oh
Yeah.
they could build that. I didn't know I could design something like that, because I didn't know people could build it, and like here's a crazy design, and then people are making that stuff come to life. So it's pretty incredible. I mean,
Which kind
That's
of
what I was saying earlier. It just seems like there's no limit these days. I mean, as long as you got the resources to fund some of it. But I mean, as far as creativity and what can be done nowadays, it seems like
anything.
there's really nothing off the
Yeah.
table as far as
if you're willing to pay for it and put in the time,
exactly. Yeah,
it can be done.
it can be done. Yeah,
Which this is going to be an interesting year in our hobby / profession, because there's been a lot of car show cancellations already. We leading up to SEMA, I don't know, what manufacturers will even have the funds to go, or you don't know what's going to happen there. So this will be an interesting year to see where some of these really awesome builds end up, because there's going to be a lot of big changes, right?
There's going to be enough builds for 2 years of shows.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's the case. So then, we were kind of talking about the other day. I'm like, are these companies going to want to, or is it going to slow down a little bit, and maybe stuff wouldn't be ready for SEMA? Are companies going to want to go, spend all that money this year to kind of set up for those big shows? So
well, and we also had all the magazines go away. So like the manufacturers and dealers of parts, they don't really have a place to advertise anymore. You know, they do have some places, but the magazines were a big place of advertisement for them. So
Yeah.
now, you know, and with the car shows kind of slowing down for this first probably half of the year, it's going to be an interesting year for this profession or hobby.
Yeah, the actual cancellation of car shows is going to be unprecedented, really. But I do recall back, when we had the recession of like what 08, so 07, 08.
Yeah,
I know myself, I didn't slow down at all. I was swamped the whole time. I've never like had a slow period.
yeah,
I'm thinking our hobby will do okay. We'll adapt some way through this
Right.
sure.
show cancellations and the maybe there's a slowdown in some manufacturing stuff, but this hobby it'll go through. I'm pretty sure of it
Because these cars are like an addiction.
Yeah,
they are
people,
addiction,
yeah.
and
It's in people's blood. Yeah,
yeah.
it's not going to
Well,
go
and I
anywhere.
think it's also kind of a healing thing for a lot of people too. Whether
Yeah.
they go out and work on their car and it makes them feel good for that day, or
Yeah.
they're having a builder build something for them. I think it really can make people happy. And I think that's why it's going to continue to move on this year.
It will. Somehow it will.
Yeah.
Well, I think we hit about, what do we do? 40 minutes? 45 minutes?
50.
50 minutes.
Wow.
Oh,
It's easy talking to Eric.
man. We've been blabbering for 50 minutes.
We could keep blabbering, but we usually do 40, 50 minutes and let people get back to drawing awesome cars. So
Oh, yeah.
where
Yeah,
can
we're busy,
people
man.
where can people see more of your stuff?
Probably the best place would be like Instagram.
Yeah.
You can find me easily on Instagram or Facebook. And those are probably the best, easiest ways.
And you're selling some merch now, aren't you? You have shirts.
I got some T-shirts on Big Cartel.
Okay.
There's a few T-shirts and, well, there was a calendar, but a little late now. But yeah, there's some T-shirts on there.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
Is there a coloring book?
Is there a coloring book? Tim wants to know if there's a coloring book.
There was, but it's through a merchant program, so it went through Amazon and like Barnes and Noble.
Right.
I didn't keep it in the house. I let it go.
Let it
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
You can still get it. You can get it on like Amazon. If you look up, my name and coloring book, you'll find it on like Amazon or Barnes and Noble.
That's actually
It's been out for a few years.
Yeah,
but it's pretty,
Yeah.
pretty cool. I was always about to do like a volume 2, volume 3,
right.
volume 4, but
No time.
you guys keep blowing me up at work, and I don't have time to mess with it. So
Yep.
Well, again, thank you, Eric, so much.
Yeah. Thanks for all your
Keep
efforts and work.
moving through your 16th year of quarantine there in Florida.
I'll try.
And
I'll try.
again, Noah Alexander, Charles Cruz. This is Making Speed. Thank
Thanks,
you,
Eric.
guys.
Thanks, guys.
right.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
See ya.
Thanks.